The auditorium lights dimmed, and silence fell over the crowd of nearly 40,000 people. A single spotlight cut through the darkness, landing on Billie Eilish as she stepped up to the microphone. Her hair was dyed a fading hue of electric green, her hoodie oversized and frayed at the edges. The beat began softly, pulsing like a heartbeat, and then her voice rang out, not in melody, but in words. "This is not just a concert," she said. "This is resistance. This is for every young person silenced, for every protester dragged away. We see you. And we won't shut up." The crowd erupted. Phones lit up like fireflies in the dark. By the next morning, the clip had gone viral, shared by activists, artists, students, and even some politicians. But not everyone applauded. On the third morning, Billie received an official summons. The Department of Homeland Security, in collaboration with federal prosecutors, accused her of public sedition and inciting unrest under the guise of artistic expression. Though symbolic in nature, the lawsuit made headlines. A global pop star being dragged into court by the U.S. government? It was a circus waiting to happen. Her legal team urged her to let them handle everything. But Billie refused. "If they want me quiet," she said, "they'll have to hear me first." The courtroom on the first day was filled beyond capacity. Reporters, legal scholars, youth activists, all crammed into the pews. The judge presiding, Chief Justice Maureen Caldwell, known for her no-nonsense demeanor and past rulings against celebrity activism. Billie walked into the courtroom without makeup, wearing a simple black outfit. No entourage. No theatrics. Just presence. The bailiff called the room to order. Cameras were banned, but outside, a sea of young people chanted her lyrics on the courthouse steps. "I'm the bad guy, duh," one banner read, crossed out and replaced with "I'm the loud girl. Listen." Justice Caldwell eyed Billie with the kind of skepticism reserved for those who dared mix culture with confrontation. "Ms. Eilish," she began, "do you understand the severity of the charges against you?" Billie nodded calmly. "I understand that I'm being punished for saying things some people don't want to hear." A rustle of murmurs echoed through the courtroom. The prosecution painted Billie as a reckless icon with too much influence. Her music, they claimed, masked insidious calls to action. They presented evidence: her lyrics, social media posts, speeches at rallies. They showed footage of protests that allegedly erupted after her concerts. But Billie never looked away. She watched each video, each comment, as if memorizing them. Not with fear, but with intention. When the judge recessed for the day, Billie exited to a wall of flashbulbs. But she didn't speak to reporters. That night, in her hotel room, she wrote. Not songs, but statements. "Art has always been a mirror," she scribbled in a leather notebook. "But maybe this time, it's a hammer too." She looked out the window at the line of people still camped outside. Some held signs. Others just sat in quiet solidarity. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about voice. And Billie Eilish was just getting started. Day 2 began under gray skies, as if even the weather sensed the weight of what was about to unfold. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged. Justice Caldwell took her seat with mechanical precision, glasses perched low on her nose. Billie sat quietly beside her court-appointed legal advisor, not an attorney of record, just someone assigned to assist with procedures since she had waived formal counsel. Prosecutor Victor Langley rose. A seasoned government lawyer in his late 50s, Langley was known for his commanding presence and ruthless efficiency. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his notes, and then approached the bench. "Your Honor," he began, "what we are dealing with here is not an artist under scrutiny, but a movement disguised as music. Ms. Eilish has, through her celebrity and lyrical manipulation, incited distrust in governmental institutions and directly fueled unlawful assemblies." He turned toward Billie, his voice sharp. "Her platform is not benign. It's a megaphone. And when she says, 'Burn the silence,' people take to the streets. Some with signs. Some with stones." Gasps from the audience. The judge gave a warning glance. Langley cued a video, a clip from a recent protest where a group of young people blocked a government convoy, chanting lines from one of Billie's songs. In the background, her voice boomed from a portable speaker, "We're done whispering." Billie's eyes narrowed. She leaned slightly forward, watching intently. "Freedom of speech," Langley continued, "has boundaries. And when words provoke action, chaotic, unlawful action, those words become weapons." He let the phrase hang in the air. Billie slowly stood up. "I'd like to respond." Justice Caldwell arched an eyebrow. "You'll get your chance, Ms. Eilish. For now, sit." But Billie didn't sit. "Your Honor, this isn't a criminal trial. It's a performance. Not mine, his." The room stirred. "Sit down, Ms. Eilish, Caldwell repeated, voice sharp. Billie paused, then complied. Langley resumed. He introduced a social media thread posted by Billie 2 days before her controversial concert. In it, she had written, "No one gets to silence the scream of a generation. Not anymore." Langley snapped the printed screenshot for effect. "Language like this undermines peace," he said. "It radicalizes." The judge took notes without expression. Then came a witness. A former concert attendee, barely 18, took the stand. He described feeling electrified by Billie's words, how her voice made him feel like change was possible and necessary. Langley tried to spin it as indoctrination. But the boy, trembling yet sincere, added something unscripted. "She didn't tell us what to do. She reminded us that we mattered. That was enough." Langley sighed, visibly annoyed. When the court recessed for lunch, Billie sat alone on a bench in the hallway. A reporter attempted to approach, but she waved him off. In her hand, she held a small folded piece of paper. A fan had handed it to her that morning. It read, "They used to say girls like you should be quiet. Thank you for being loud." Billie smiled faintly. Inside the courtroom, Langley was confident. The public didn't understand the intricacies of national security. But the court did. He would win this by the letter of the law, even if he lost the spirit of it. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Billie wasn't building a defense. She was constructing a revelation. And when she finally stood to speak, it wouldn't just be her voice echoing through the courtroom. It would be a generation's. The third day began without music. No crowds, no chants. Just a stillness that settled over the courthouse like fog. Billie arrived early, alone, again. Her team had offered to walk her in, shield her from the media chaos, but she refused. The cameras didn't scare her. Silence did. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor was already waiting, his files arranged in militant order. Justice Caldwell entered a few minutes later, her expression unreadable as always. She took her seat, rapped the gavel once, and signaled the day's proceedings to begin. Langley wasted no time. "Your Honor," he said, rising, "I move to introduce a new set of exhibits, transcripts from Ms. Eilish's recent podcast interviews where she expresses direct disdain for the current administration and questions the legitimacy of federal oversight on free expression." Caldwell nodded. "Proceed." The recordings began to play. Billie's voice echoed through the room, not angry, not aggressive, but pointed. "It's not about hating the system," she had said in one clip. "It's about demanding that the system evolve. It's broken. We feel it every day." Langley paused the audio. "This is a celebrity with over 150 million followers," he said. "Her words reach nations, not just fans. And with that kind of power comes responsibility, legal responsibility." He turned to the judge. "We're not trying to censor an artist. We're trying to prevent a collapse in public trust." The courtroom was quiet. Caldwell adjusted her glasses. "And yet, Mr. Langley, I'm still waiting for evidence that words alone meet the threshold for sedition." The prosecutor tensed. "The context, Your Honor. Her words are the spark. The protests, the defiance, they're the fire." Billie stood. "Then maybe," she said softly, "it's the fire that needs to be understood." Gasps rippled across the room. The judge stared her down. "Ms. Eilish, you are not permitted to speak out of turn." But Billie didn't sit. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom and placed a single book on the evidence table, the United States Constitution. "I would like to enter this as my only exhibit," she said. The room fell into complete silence. Caldwell looked over her glasses, intrigued. "Explain." Billie turned to face everyone. "You keep asking whether my words caused something unlawful. But have any of you asked whether what's happening outside this courtroom is lawful? Have you read the First Amendment? I mean, not interpreted it, but actually read it?" She opened the book. "Congress shall make no law, abridging the freedom of speech," she read aloud. "It doesn't say, except when it makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't say, unless the speaker is famous." Langley interrupted. "This isn't a civics class, Ms. Eilish." "No," she said, louder now. "It's a courtroom. And I'm on trial for expressing what thousands are too afraid to say." The judge raised her hand. "That's enough." But Billie wasn't finished. "I didn't start a war," she said. "I started a conversation. If that's a crime, then the Constitution is guilty too." Dead silence. Even Langley had nothing to add. The judge sat back in her chair, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on Billie like she was seeing her for the first time, not as a pop star, but as something else entirely. The room recessed for the day. No one moved for several seconds after the gavel struck. Outside, the streets were fuller than ever. But no one was shouting. They were just waiting. Waiting for the next word. By the fourth day, the courthouse had transformed into a monument of public reckoning. The sidewalks were flooded with handwritten posters, some covered in plastic to protect against the drizzle that had begun overnight. Silence is a sentence, read one. Another simply said, "Speak, Billie." Inside, the courtroom doors creaked open. Billie entered quietly, wearing the same black outfit as before. It was intentional, she wanted to be seen as constant, grounded, immovable. But today, something was different. In her hand was a letter. A single-page envelope with an official government seal. She had received it the night before, slid under her hotel room door by an anonymous courier. As the judge entered and the court was called to order, Billie remained standing. She approached the bench. "Your Honor, before we begin, I respectfully request to submit this letter into the record." Judge Caldwell raised an eyebrow but gestured for the bailiff to retrieve it. She read it silently. Her eyes scanned the page once, then again, slower this time. She whispered something to her clerk, then cleared her throat. "This is unexpected," she murmured. "Counselor Langley, have you seen this?" Langley approached, took the document, and his brow furrowed. The signature at the bottom made his eyes twitch. It was from a retired federal judge, one of the original authors of the Patriot Speech Limitation Act. And it was an apology. The letter confessed that the law used to accuse Billie was never meant to be applied to artistic speech. It admitted that the language was vague, weaponizable, and, most damningly, that Billie's case was precisely the kind of misuse the author had feared. Langley stammered. "Your Honor, this is not admissible. It's not part of the original evidence. It could be fabricated." But Caldwell interrupted him. "Mr. Langley, the author of this letter is a former colleague. His identity is not in question." She turned back to Billie. "Did you reach out to this individual?" Billie shook her head. "No, ma'am. I think he was listening." There was a moment of breathless pause. Then, for the first time, the judge leaned back, not out of authority, but out of something that almost resembled reflection. "I will allow this letter to be entered into the record," she said quietly. "Though it does not negate the law as written, it adds perspective." Langley looked ready to object again, but he didn't. The courtroom's energy shifted. The audience, once just observers, now felt like silent participants in something bigger than procedure. Billie turned and walked back to her seat. In her hands was still the Constitution, but now, also, the contradiction. During recess, a journalist caught up with her in the hallway. "Billie, do you feel like you're winning?" She gave him a glance that was neither smug nor defeated. "It's not about winning. It's about waking up." He blinked. "To what?" "To the idea," she said, "that truth and volume don't always arrive in the same sentence." She pushed the courtroom door open and disappeared behind it. Back inside, a clerk slipped a note to Justice Caldwell. It read, "Social sentiment surrounding trial has reached record highs. Youth-led demonstrations growing in 12 cities. All peaceful." Caldwell folded the paper and slid it under her folder. For the first time since the trial began, she whispered aloud, not to the court, but to herself. "We're not just judging her." She tapped her pen once. "We're being judged, too." The morning of day 5 began with silence again, but this time, it was strategic. No crowds chanting. No music. Just thousands of young people sitting on the courthouse steps, their mouths covered by black tape with one word written across, "Speak." Inside, the air was tight with anticipation. Billie sat quietly, scribbling something in her notebook, as Langley prepared to introduce what he called the most critical evidence yet. The judge entered, robe crisp, eyes scanning the room as if bracing herself for a shift in tone. "Your Honor," Langley began, "we now present communications between Ms. Eilish and several non-governmental organizations, in which she is not only advocating civil disobedience, but helping coordinate it." He clicked a remote. Screens lit up with email chains, Discord logs, even short video messages Billie had recorded for protest groups overseas. "This is not merely expression," Langley said, voice rising. "This is mobilization. This is subversion. And this," he held up a transcript, "is international." The courtroom buzzed. Caldwell's eyes locked on Billie. "Is this accurate?" Billie stood. "Yes," she said. "I speak with activists. I support those who resist peacefully. I believe in global solidarity." "And do you deny helping organize any form of unrest?" "I helped organize awareness," she answered. "If that causes unrest, perhaps it's not the awareness that's the problem." Langley stepped forward. "The law does not protect those who inspire action that disrupts public order." "But who defines disruption?" Billie asked, her voice firm now. "You? Me? Or the people living under it?" There was a stir in the back of the room. A reporter from the New York Times had just received a breaking alert. He whispered to his colleague. Then another buzz, phones lighting up in pockets across the audience. Judge Caldwell noticed. Is there something happening? The clerk approached her, whispering. She nodded solemnly. Ms. Eilish, she said, you may want to be aware that your message has echoed. A live stream had just begun in Washington Square Park. Tens of thousands had gathered, students, artists, teachers, nurses. And they were doing exactly what Billie had once said in her viral clip. They were silent. But present. A single screen projected her face from past speeches. No sound. Just presence. Langley sat down, deflated. The judge tapped her gavel. We will resume this afternoon. Court is adjourned for now. As people filed out, a young girl no older than 12 approached Billie with tears in her eyes. She handed her a piece of paper. It was a drawing. Billie, standing on a stage, mouth covered by tape. Above her head, even if you silence her, we heard her. Billie's hand trembled slightly as she folded the drawing and tucked it into her notebook. She walked out into the light. The silent crowd split for her like water. Somewhere in the distance, a guitar played 2 simple chords. No words. Just music. But this time, the silence sang. That afternoon, the courthouse felt less like a building and more like a ticking clock. Everyone sensed it, the case was no longer just about Billie. It was about what the courtroom stood for, and what it might fail to defend. Judge Caldwell opened the session with a calm, deliberate tone. Before we proceed, I've requested a constitutional historian to testify. This is an unusual step, but the context now demands it. Langley looked blindsided. Your Honor, I object, this is not a constitutional review hearing. It's a trial that now implicates constitutional meaning, Caldwell snapped back. Unless you plan to prosecute the entire First Amendment, Mr. Langley, you'll sit and listen. Enter Dr. Evelyn Chambers, a quiet, silver-haired woman with eyes like steel. She approached the stand, laid out a thick folder, and adjusted her glasses. Dr. Chambers, Caldwell said, you've reviewed the charges against Ms. Eilish. What is your expert opinion? Chambers glanced at Billie, then began. The Patriot Speech Limitation Act is a legislative outlier. Its ambiguity allows for selective enforcement, often against dissident voices. Historically, laws like this surface during times of fear, post-war, post-attack, post-crisis. They rarely endure scrutiny under legal sunlight. She paused. The speech in question is passionate, uncomfortable, and unpopular in certain circles. But it is not illegal. If anything, it is quintessentially American. Gasps echoed. Langley stood, clutching at anything. But isn't it dangerous to allow celebrities this much unchecked influence? Chambers smiled softly. Influence is not a crime. Influence without accountability might be. But accountability must be legal, not political. And what Ms. Eilish has done, at its core, is use a microphone, not a Molotov. Billie's eyes locked with Chambers. It was the first time she saw someone outside her generation get it. Langley approached the stand with desperation. Dr. Chambers, are you suggesting the law itself is unconstitutional? I'm suggesting, she said calmly, that when laws are used not to protect citizens, but to silence them, they have already failed their constitutional purpose. Caldwell exhaled deeply, like the words had landed heavy in her chest. The judge turned toward Billie. You've remained remarkably composed, Ms. Eilish. I assume you've prepared something for your closing statement? Billie nodded. She stood, walked slowly to the center of the courtroom, and unfolded a single sheet of paper. This isn't just about me, she began. It's about every student afraid to speak up, every artist told to dilute their vision, every teacher forced to skip chapters in history. It's about the erosion of trust in the very tools meant to protect expression. She held up the paper. This is a page from a banned textbook. It describes the Kent State shootings, where students were killed for protesting peacefully. I carry it because history repeats. Unless someone makes noise when it tries to whisper its return. She folded the page and placed it beside the Constitution on the evidence table. I rest my case. No further questions. No rebuttals. The courtroom sat suspended in time. And for the first time, Judge Caldwell didn't adjourn the session with a gavel. She simply said, we'll reconvene tomorrow. But I suspect history already has. Outside, the crowd was silent once again. But the silence no longer felt like surrender. It felt like waiting, for history to choose a side. The final day arrived like a quiet storm, gray skies, soft drizzle, and a courtroom buzzing with restrained electricity. Billie stood in the corridor before entering the courtroom, flanked not by lawyers, but by her mother and her older brother, Phineas. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The weight of what was coming had eclipsed language itself. Inside, the crowd had grown. Even former political opponents had shown up, some in disguise. Students clutched wet cardboard signs outside the windows, verdict or voice. Judge Caldwell entered without ceremony. She didn't look up as she sorted the final papers in front of her. The clerk leaned in to whisper something. "We're ready to proceed," Caldwell said. Langley remained seated. His face was pale, hands clenching his pen hard enough to leave dents. "Ms. Eilish," the judge began, "before I issue my final statement, is there anything else you wish to say?" Billie stood slowly. She approached the podium, not with fire, but with stillness. "I know I've been called many things in this courtroom," she began. "A threat, an instigator, a manipulator. But what I am, is a mirror. If the system is afraid of what it sees in me, maybe it's not me that needs to change." The courtroom was silent. "Words matter," she continued. "But when laws twist words into weapons, it's not speech that's dangerous. It's silence. That's why I kept speaking." She stepped back. "No dramatics. Just truth." Judge Caldwell nodded. She turned to the jury box. 12 men and women who had been instructed not to let passion override principle. 12 people who had just watched not a criminal, but a citizen, stand unflinching in the storm. The jury may now deliver its decision. The foreman stood. "We find the defendant, Billie Eilish, not guilty on all charges." Gasps erupted. Then a strange thing happened. The judge smiled. Not out of approval, but out of something deeper. Relief. "This court is adjourned," she said, tapping her gavel. Reporters exploded into movement. Camera shutters clicked like gunfire. But Billie just stood there. Still. Silent. A storm within herself. Outside the courthouse, the crowd received the news. But no cheers went up. No chants. Instead, in complete synchrony, everyone sat down. In total silence. And from within the sea of bodies, one figure stood, a young girl holding a sign. This time, "We spoke." Later that evening, the hashtag "We spoke now you listen" trended globally. Billie returned to her hotel, exhausted beyond measure. On her bed was a note. It was handwritten, unsigned. It read, "You didn't win the case. You reminded us why we fight them." She folded the paper. The world had changed, but quietly. Not with a bang. With a whisper that refused to die. 3 days had passed since the verdict. Billie thought freedom would feel like sunlight. Instead, it felt like glass, transparent, cold, and ready to shatter. The streets were quiet, too quiet. Not from calm, but from surveillance. Her hotel room was now a surveillance cell. Plainclothes agents loitered in the lobby, pretending to read newspapers. Her manager received an anonymous call, "Tell your client to keep her mouth shut. The next trial won't be as polite." Headlines flipped like coins. Some read, "Billie Eilish, defender of democracy." Others, "Pop star manipulates court with celebrity clout." The nation was split. Billie sat in a small studio apartment, somewhere on the edge of D.C., watching a Senate hearing on her trial. One congressman called her a dangerous precedent. Another called her a necessary reminder. Both missed the point. She turned the TV off. A knock at the door. It was Nadia, her longtime assistant, holding a small box. "This came for you." No sender, no return address. Billie opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in plain parchment, was a single microcassette. A note was taped to it. "They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what happens if others stop being afraid too." Below the message, an acronym: PSL. Public Speech League. A now-defunct civil liberties group that had vanished a decade ago after political suppression. Many thought it had been dismantled entirely. Billie stared at the cassette. "You know what this is?" Nadia asked. "It's either a trap or a torch," Billie replied. She slid the cassette into an old recorder Nadia had pulled from storage. Static filled the room, then a voice came through. Male. Steady. Experienced. "If you're hearing this, it means the first trial ended. But there will be a second. Not against you, against the idea of you. The system doesn't fear martyrs. It fears momentum." The voice listed encrypted links, server addresses, instructions for secure communication. A new resistance infrastructure. Nadia looked stunned. "Is this, like an underground movement?" Billie didn't answer. She was already taking notes. The backlash had begun, not just from the media or government, but from the very laws that claimed to protect her. And yet, the fire hadn't dimmed. It had spread underground. Later that night, Billie tweeted one sentence. "If they're still watching, it means we're still winning." The post received 19 million retweets in 12 hours. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was who messaged her next. A federal judge. The text simply read, "Meet me. No phones. No press. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. Lincoln Memorial." The system wasn't done fighting. But neither was Billie. The Lincoln Memorial at night looked like a ghost of democracy, solemn, vast, echoing with the weight of unspoken promises. Billie arrived just before 7 p.m. She wore a simple hoodie, black jeans, no makeup. A hood shadowed her face as she climbed the marble steps, alone but watched from every angle. A silhouette stood beneath Lincoln's seated statue. The woman turned. Older, black trench coat, gray scarf tucked beneath her collar. No name tag. But Billie recognized her. Judge Eleanor Marks. She had once been shortlisted for the Supreme Court. Instead, she disappeared from public life after refusing to sign off on a high-profile surveillance bill. "I don't have long," Marks said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. "They're watching me too." "Then why come?" Billie asked. "Because the system only survives if good people stay silent. And you forced many of us to make a choice." Judge Marks handed Billie a manila envelope. "No digital trace. This isn't evidence. It's history." Billie opened it slowly. Inside, photocopies of internal memos, emails, and minutes from confidential government meetings. All discussing her trial, before it ever began, "They planned your prosecution 6 months before your speech," Marks whispered. "It wasn't about what you said. It was about making sure no one else tried to say it." Billie's hands trembled slightly. "You want me to leak this?" she asked. "No. I want you to understand that you were never on trial. The First Amendment was." A long silence passed. Then Billie asked, "Why me?" "Because your voice doesn't come with a party logo. Because they thought you'd break when pushed. And because you didn't." She turned to leave. Billie called after her, "What happens now?" Mark stopped. "Now?" She exhaled. "Now they tighten their grip. And now, you decide how to loosen it." The judge melted back into the shadows, swallowed by the pillars. Billie walked home alone. That night, she scanned every page. She didn't post them. Not yet. Instead, she did something more dangerous. She recorded a podcast, anonymous, encrypted, and raw. In it, she didn't name names. She didn't accuse. She told a story. Her story. It traveled quietly, passed from phone to phone like a whispered secret. Within 48 hours, it reached more than 70 countries. The podcast ended with these words. "If your voice shakes when you speak, you're not weak. You're human. And they don't fear perfection, they fear proof we still care." Somewhere deep within a federal agency, an analyst paused the file. He clicked replay. Then he took out his phone. And pressed record. The revolution wasn't being televised. It was being heard. 1 year later. No charges. No further trials. No public apology. But the silence itself was telling. In the months that followed her underground podcast, something changed, not in the government, but in the people. In Turkey, a young girl in Ankara quoted Billie's final words during a student protest. In Seoul, university students spray-painted, "They fear momentum" on the steps of the Ministry of Justice. In Nigeria, high schoolers used Billie's voiceover in a TikTok campaign to protest school closures. Her voice had become everyone's voice. And yet, Billie disappeared from the stage. She canceled her tour. She avoided cameras. She wrote, but didn't publish. She was not hiding, just incubating. Then came the hearing. An annual international forum held at The Hague, meant to spotlight threats to democracy. No one expected Billie to attend. But she didn't just attend. She curated the final performance. The lights dimmed. No introduction. No anthem. Instead, one by one, 10 girls from 10 different countries stepped onto the stage. Each wore black. Each held a page. They read her story. Line by line. Language by language. Tier by tier. Not as fans. Not as activists. But as witnesses. Billie sat in the front row, tears forming but never falling. When the last girl finished, there was no applause. Just a silence so deep, it felt holy. Then someone stood up. Then another. A silent ovation swept through the room. Later that night, Billie posted a photo. It was just a wall. Graffitied in bold letters, "The system is louder. Be louder still." No caption. No hashtags. It went viral in 15 minutes. Governments scrambled to discredit her. Media outlets debated her legacy. But none of it mattered. Because somewhere, in a village or city or classroom, someone heard her voice. And found their own.